Well, shalom, dear friends, and welcome to this lesson in Hebrew school. Today, the grammar lesson is going to be about prepositions. So we will be looking at some prepositions in a few minutes here. And like the last video that recorded, this one is going to be very lengthy. At the end of our grammar part of the lesson, we will be going to the text of Matthew chapter 2 in the Hebrew translation of the New Testament. And it's a fairly lengthy chapter, 23 verses. So it'll take a long time to go through that. And as I encouraged you in some of the previous videos, I would encourage you to watch this video in segments, particularly as we get to the Hebrew text of Matthew chapter 2. If you find you're losing concentration and your thoughts are kind of drifting away, that's a good time to stop and then come back to the Hebrew text later. And the reason I'm doing it this way is so with each grammar lesson that you get, there will be plenty of Hebrew biblical text for you to study and think about and hear spoken and just get familiar with. So I want to give you lots and lots of text and a little bit of grammar. So with that said, let's go ahead and get to our grammar part of the lesson. Today we're talking about prepositions. Prepositions can appear in our Hebrew text in several different forms. One of those forms is an independent form, and that means that the preposition is a separate word from the noun that it, I don't know, kind of defines or modifies. In this example, the Hebrew is lifanei hamelech. Hamelech is the king. Lifanei means before, and it can mean like before in time, like sometime in the past, or it can also be a reference to like before the king in the sense of being in his presence. And the independent idea here is that the preposition and the noun are two separate words. Then we have the makef, which is a little kind of a hyphen or a bridge or a connecting symbol between the preposition, which in this case is min, and the noun haaretz, the earth or the land. And the two are connected with this little makef, is the Hebrew word for this bridge or this connecting line or whatever. Then we also have inseparable ones, which means that the prepositions and the ones that we'll be focusing on today are ba, ka, and la. This is bait, kaf, and lamed. So those are the three that we'll be learning. And usually when those are used, they are connected as a prefix inseparably to the word that they are modifying or kind of defining. So in this case, we've got the word sade, shin dalet hey, or in this case, it's sin dalet hey. And that's the Hebrew word for a field. So the ba, a preposition, the bait prefix preposition means in, like in or into in English. The kaf or the ka prefix means like, which is like similar to or in the same way. And then we have the lamed or the la prefix, and it means to. It can also mean a few other things as well. It can mean like by, like a reference to authorship. The Psalms that are written by David in the Old Testament, they are called Mizmor le David. Mizmor is the word for a psalm. Le David means by David. So it's not a psalm that's written to David, but it's a psalm written by David. So the la means to or by or some other things. Got to be flexible with the meanings of these prepositions and golly, some of the words that we will encounter as well. There is one additional one that's not listed here, but I want to share with you. It's not used as often as these three, in addition to these two are used, and that is a sheen prepositional prefix, a sheen. And when you see a sheen prefix, and I'll try to point them out in the text, it means that or which, that or which. So the ones we've learned so far are lifane is a preposition which means before, either before in time or in the presence of. We've got min or me without the in. Me is just a shortened form of min, and the noon kind of drops off. And mean or me means from. It means from. Now, this is one we got to be flexible with because sometimes a MAME prefix can also mean like the opposite of from. It can also mean to. So the context is going to have to help us determine whether it means to or from. And sometimes it's really confusing. Like when it talks about the Garden of Eden was mi kedem, or from the east. That makes us think it was in the west. And so people think that the Garden of Eden was like in the western part of the Middle East. Other people think that the mi kedem means that it was toward the Middle East, like two opposite meanings. And they place the Garden of Eden in the around the Euphrates River in the east. So we've got lifane before, we've got min or me, which means from, ba means in, ka means like, and la means to or by. With a few other, with a few exceptions, like I say, we'll keep our eyes open. And all these different forms of the ba and the mame here are just dependent on what letter or actually what vowel comes before the prepositional prefix. So just be aware that depending on the letter that follows the prefix or the vowel that follows the prefix, it may change the vowel that is under the consonant part of the prefix. So any bait that you see with any vowel is likely going to be the prefix in. So I think that's about enough for prepositions. So let's go ahead and take a look at our text for today. And this is the story of the visit of the wise men after the birth of Jesus, or Yeshua. The Bible software we're using today is Accordance, the free version, and the texts that we're looking at are the modern Hebrew New Testament with Strong's numbers. So when we highlight the word, we get some information in the info window down at the bottom of the screen. It's not information about the Hebrew words that we're looking at, but the Greek words from which they're translated. So this word I've got highlighted is the word genao in the Greek, which means the same thing, to be the father of, or to bear, or to engender children. Nolad means to be born. So we've got that. We're also looking at the New King James Version with Strong's. Actually, we could look at a Hebrew, or rather a Jewish English Bible. Maybe we'll do that today. So we will look at the complete Jewish Bible. by David Stern, is the translator of this, and he uses the Hebrew names of Bible characters. So Jesus becomes Yeshua in the complete Jewish Bible. So that's kind of cool. So we will use that one today. So let's go ahead and get started here on the story of the wise men. And as we go through the text, I think you may find that this story is way different from the traditional understandings of it. We'll point out some of those differences, but we want to focus mainly on the Hebrew text. So let's go ahead and get started here. And I will especially try to point out the prepositions that we come across in our text. I'm sure I won't get all of them, but I'll try to get a few of them. Now, this first word, ba'et, eight is the Hebrew word for time. So we've got a bait, a prefix preposition. It means in. So in eight, in the time. Sheh, here we have a prefixed sheen. Remember, that was the preposition that was not included in our grammar lesson, which means that. In the time that nolad, Sheh nolad, that was born. Yeshua, here's Jesus' name in Hebrew, that Yeshua was born. Bavet. Here we've got the Hebrew word for house, veit, with a bait prefix. So in veit lechem. Now, sometimes that's the name of the city, Bethlehem. Sometimes Beit Lechem are joined as one word, but here in this text, they're separated. It's not uncommon for them to be separated. So Beit Lechem is in Bethlehem. Yehuda, Judah, is the southern part of Israel. So I guess I'm told there was a Bethlehem up in Galilee somewhere, another small town up there. And, Matthew distinguishes the Bethlehem from up in Galilee from the one down near Jerusalem. Bethlehem is about 5 miles south of Jerusalem. Actually, it's kind of a suburb of Jerusalem because it's south of Jerusalem is pretty built up. So if you go 5 miles south of Jerusalem, you come to Bethlehem. That, of course, was the birthplace of David, who became the king of Israel. So the house of David is from Bethlehem. So it's kind of a famous little town south of Jerusalem there. Bimei, Yameh, Yom is the Hebrew word for day. In this case, day is plural. So here's our prepositional prefix, bet. In the days of Hordos, Hordos is Herod Hamelech, the king. That we've got that. When we have a hey prefix, you'll remember that is usually the definite article, the king. Ba'u came, they came, L'Yerushalayim, to, here we've got a prefixed lamed preposition, which means to Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. Hokmim, oh, I'm sorry, I got the vowels wrong here. Hakamim, Hakamim would be wise men. The Greek word here is magoi, from which we get the term magi. Now, David Stern in the Complete Jewish Bible uses the term magi, M-A-G-I. I don't want to talk to you a little bit about that, but let's go ahead and complete this sentence. They came to Jerusalem, Hochmim, wise men. So in English, we would say wise men came. Men from, that's one of our prepositions, but it's separated in this case. Ha-Mizrach. Mizrach is the Hebrew word for the east, and then the hey prefix is the east. So Eastern regions from Babylon or Persia, which would be modern day Iraq and Iran, from that area, the Euphrates River area in the Middle East. So wise men came from Mizrach. Now, again, traditionally, the Magi are thought to be Gentile astronomers, probably, or some say astrologers, to make it a little more controversial, because they followed a star. So they followed this star to Jerusalem. And so they're usually thought to be, this is like the first time that Gentiles would worship the newborn king, Yeshua. But a little bit of study about the Magoi, or the Magi, teaches us that they were a priestly group from, first of all, from Babylon, when Babylon was ruling the world, and later from among the Persians, or the Medo-Persians. The Medians were in the north, and they united with the Persians in the south to form the Medo-Persian Empire. And the Magi were like a priestly, prophetic, a very powerful and influential group of religious leaders. And the interesting thing is, the book of Daniel tells us that Daniel, of course, found favor with the king of Babylon, and later with the kings of Persia, like Darius the Mede, the king of Persia. And that he was appointed, Daniel, the Hebrew prophet, the Jewish prophet, was appointed to be a Rav Mag, which means a great one, or a leader of the Magi. And so he may have started like the school of the prophets there. He may have taught the Hebrew Bible to the people, to the Magi who were a part of this organization. So it may very well be that these Magi were not Gentiles at all, but they were, we would call them Jewish rabbis, religious leaders from the East, who did not return to the West for the rebuilding of Israel and Jerusalem and the temple in the times of Ezra and Nehemiah and so forth. But we know that the Magoi were a very influential party all the way from the time of Daniel and beyond, and that they may have come from what was then known, at the time of Jesus, was known as the Parthian Empire, because the Parthians and the Romans were in kind of a contest to see who would rule the land of Israel. And so at the time Jesus was born, the Romans were in charge, but they were always aware that the Parthians may have been coming after that land. So when these Magoi, who may have been from the Parthian Empire, came looking for this newborn king, it's no wonder that King Herod was all upset, because he thought this may be kind of the prelude to an invasion by the Parthians. So the Magoi, they may have been Jewish rabbis. They may not have been Gentiles at all. And well, what did they do when they got to Jerusalem? Verse 2. Sha'alu, they asked, Hekan, where, Melech, king, Hayuhudim, king of the Jews, Asher, Nolad. So where can we find the king of the Jews who has been born? Ki, because, or for, Ra'inu, we have seen, et kokavo. Kokav is the Hebrew word for a star. We have seen his star, bamizrach, in, here's the prepositional prefix, ba, meaning in. Mizrach is the Hebrew word for the east, out there in Parthian territory, maybe. Uvanu, and we have come, le, the Lamed prefix, meaning to, And here the prefix can mean to, like in the direction of Jerusalem, or it can express purpose, like in order to, hishtachavot, to worship or to give worship, lo, to him. So a star has a rose in the east, and these Magoi thought it had some great significance, and so they followed it to wherever it led. Now, one of the things that I want to mention to you is that one of the most popular interpretations of the Star of Bethlehem, it's called, is that it was an alignment of two planets, and I forget which two planets it was, but I guess the astronomers have figured out that at about the time of the birth of Yeshua, two planets were aligned. And of course, the reflection of the sun, I guess, gave them a very bright form or visage. And that was the unique thing about the Star of Bethlehem, that it was just really bright. But that description or interpretation does not fit the story at all, because this was a unique star that led the wise men not only to Jerusalem to find the newborn king, but to a specific house where Yeshua and his family were living. So my belief is that this star was a specially created star that hovered very low on the horizon and was easy for the wise men to follow wherever God wanted them to go. So it was like a burning, UFO in the sky. Now, another interpretation, similar to the one that I just gave you, is that oftentimes in the Bible, angels are referred to as stars, especially morning stars, like rising stars. And so it could have been not a like an astronomical entity, but it could have been an angel, like a bright and shining angel. So those are two possibilities, but this is not something that's in outer space. This was something that was probably within the confines of our atmosphere, and it led the wise men first to Jerusalem and then later to the place where Yeshua was living. So they asked where the newborn king was so that they could go and worship him. Ka'asher, here we've got a kaf prefix, asher, that is the Hebrew word for that or which, like which, ka'asher. Kind of, it really means when, but that's one of the ways that you say when in Hebrew. Shama, he heard. Zot, this. Horodos, Herod. Hamelech, the king. Nidham. Nidham means to be like stirred up or troubled or concerned. The Greek word is tarasso, means to be troubled or concerned. Well, we've already talked about one reason why King Herod might have been concerned by the appearance of these wise men, because he thought maybe it was a prelude to a Parthian invasion, that this was like the, I don't know, advance party of an invasion. Maybe the Parthian armies were out in the Arabian desert there, waiting to invade the promised land. So that's one thing that troubled him. Another thing that troubled him was that the wise men say that this person who has been born is a newborn king. And of course, Herod was hoping that his dynasty and his sons would rule in his place, probably for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So this was a threat to his kingship or his rule. Who means he in the Hebrew. He, ve, and call, and all Yerushalayim, imo, with him. Let's go to bring number 4 up to the top. Who, he, who means he in Hebrew. So Herod, kinas, he gathered together et kol roshe hakohanim, all the heads of the among the priests, and Sophre and the writers, the grammates in Greek, the scribes, that's the word I was looking for, the scribes of the people, ha'am, v'sha'al, and he asked Otam, them, Apho, where Yivaled is to be born HaMashiach, the Mashiach. Now, this is an interesting question that he asks because the wise men said they were looking for a newborn king, but Herod calls him the Messiah, um, which he was and is. But it's interesting that Herod was able to understand this. Although the Bible calls Herod the king of the Jews, it doesn't mean that he was a Jew. He was a descendant of Esau from the land of Edom. And at the time of the New Testament, the Edomites were called Idumeans. So Herod was really a puppet king of the Roman Empire. And they probably intentionally chose someone who was not Jewish to, I don't know, assert and establish, Roman power in Israel. So even though he's called King of the Jews, he's not Jewish. But he has some familiarity with Judaism, and he knows that the Messiah is going to be a king. So that's pretty impressive. Wanted to talk about one other word here. It's the word kinas in Hebrew, which means to gather together. If we look at the Greek text over in the right-hand window, it's the Greek word synagogon, or synagogue. It's the Greek word from which we get the idea of a synagogue. And a synagogue is a gathering place. It's where people get together to do their business. Usually it's religious business. Usually it's like a worship service or something, or studying the scriptures. But it can also be kind of a political gathering or a social gathering. It's just a place where people get together. So Herod kinast, he got together all of his chief priests and scribes of the people, and he asked them where the Messiah was supposed to be born. Verse 5, they said, Amru, they said to him, lo, Bavet Lechem. We've already encountered Bethlehem, and here we have the Beit or Ba prefix, meaning in Bethlehem. Yehuda, and again, Bethlehem of Judah distinguishes this Bethlehem from one that was up north in Galilee. Ki, because, can, yes, or it was established or something. Niktav, because it was established in being written. Katav is to write. Al yedei, by or upon the hands of, or by the hands of, yedei hanaviim. Naviim are the prophets. And when we have a hey prefix, it means the prophets. I think I've shared with you before that the Old Testament is sometimes called the Tanakh, which is an acronym based on the three-letter root TNK. The T stands for Torah, the 5 books of Moses. The N stands for Naviim, the prophets. And the Ketuvim, the K part, the Ketuvim, the writings, refers to the holy writings, the Psalms, Proverbs, the other books of the Old Testament. So it was written by the hands of the prophet. And then we have a quote from the Old Testament. You can just barely tell it's bold text, but it is. So this is a writing from Micah chapter 5, the Old Testament prophet Micah chapter 5. And he wrote, Ve and ata, you, and you, Beit Lechem, you Bethlehem, you Bethlehem. Eretz means land, or in this case, like a region or a tribal region of Yehuda. The city of Bethlehem was in the tribe of Judah and in the region of Judea, the southern part of the promised land. Ayin Ka, this is kind of awkward. It is not to you, or you are not. Tsa'ir. Tsa'ir means to be small or insignificant. Ba'alufe, in is a prefix meaning bait a prefix. It's a preposition meaning in, or in this case it means among. So it would be kind of in the midst of or among. Alufe, the alufe are the thousands of Yehuda. So you are alufe, I guess technically would be a ruler of 1,000 soldiers, or like the mayor of a town of 1,000 people. So the alufe is the Hebrew word for 1,000, and it kind of defines the amount of authority, I suppose, or the number of people that the ruler has been given. So Bethlehem, it's kind of a small place, but the prophet Micah is saying it's not insignificant among the thousands, the rulers of Yehuda. Key, because Mimecha, we have the mem prefix from you, Mimecha, Yetze will go forth, Moshel. A Moshel is a Hebrew word for a ruler, a governor, a person in political power, a Moshel. Asher, who or which, Yireh, the root word, Resh, Ayin, Hey, is the Hebrew word for a shepherd. In this case, this is a verb signifying the work that a shepherd does. So a ruler will come forth from Bethlehem who will shepherd et ami. Et, again, is a direct object indicator, and it's usually untranslatable. So the direct object here is ami, my people, Israel, my people, Israel. As, then, kala, called or summoned, Hordos, Herod, B'chashai. We've got a bait prefix, which means in, and chashai means kind of like secretly, quietly, so everybody didn't find out about it. It means non-publicly. La hochame, to, or in this case, from, the lamed prepositional prefix. Hochme is the plural of the wise men, the wise guys, the wise men. Hamizrach, the wise men. Let's see, Hamizrach. I'm trying to figure out how that is used in the sentence here. Uvared, Mizrach. I guess it's the wise men from the east, the wise men from the east. Uvarer, varer, which means to not just to inquire or to seek, but to really do a thorough job of seeking. Et salam, from them. Matai, what? Et salam, matai. I guess it means like what time. Hofia, Hofia would be like to appear like when it's a reference to like the sunrise or something like that. When the sun appears on the eastern horizon, it's rising, it's shining. Hakokav, the star, not the stars, but the star, this special one. Verse 8, Acharei ken, after that, Shalach, he sent, Otam, he sent them, that would be Herod sent the wise men, La Bethlehem, to Bethlehem, Ba'amro, in saying, here we've got our bait prepositional prefix, in saying, and here's what he said. It's in quotation marks in this text. Lechu, go, hakru, and again, this is like another Hebrew word that means to seek out, search out, study, investigate thoroughly. Chetev means to do a good job of searching. Al odot, find out what you like. Odot would be about. It means about. Find out about Chayeled. Odot would be whatever information you can find out about Hayeled, about the child, v'chasher, and in this case it would be and when, and tim sa'u, when you find him, oto, him, chodi'u means make known. Yada is the root word here in Hebrew, which means to know. Chodi'u, I think this would be like a Hofel form of it, which means to make, y'all make known, li, to me. Kadeh, we had kadeh before, it's like, well, what time? She'avo, that I that I may go. Here we have a sheen prefix, meaning that or which, I may go, ve'esh tachave, and I may worship, lo, him, gam ani, even me. So Herod tells the wise men to go to Bethlehem and find the kid, and when you found him, come back and tell me where he is so I can go worship him too. Now, if you know anything about Herod at all, you know he had no intention of worshiping this kid. He probably was going to kill him. Hem shma'u, they, hem is they, shma'u, they heard, et, direct object indicator, divrei, the words of Hamelech, the words of the king, v'halaku, and they went their way. V'hine, behold, kaidu in Greek. So hine, something got their attention. So they went to the king to find out where to find the kid. The information the king was able to discern from his religious leaders was that the Messiah was to be born in Bethlehem. So he sends them to Bethlehem. He says, go to Bethlehem. That's what the prophets say. So they go their way, but behold, something significant happened. Hakokav, the star, she, which, Ra'u, they saw, Ba Mizrach, here we have the bait prefix preposition in the east, Hit Kadem, let's see, what, stood, I guess? The star stood before them, Lifanehem, before them, Ad, until Asher, that Ba, that it came, the Ne'emad, and stood, Me'al, from over, Lamakom, the place, She, that was, Haya is the Hebrew word for was or became, She, that, or which, or where was, Asham, there, Hayeled, where the child was. So here's the thing. Herod sends them to Bethlehem, and they start out going to Bethlehem, but all of a sudden, as they're probably leaving the city of Jerusalem, they see the star that they have followed all the way to Jerusalem. And the star, actually, if you study the Bible, is going to take them in the opposite direction. Bethlehem is south of Jerusalem, but I'm going to suggest that the star led them to the north. Now, why would I say that? First of all, I'm going to say that because Herod is going to find out a little bit later in our text that these guys have been following the star for maybe 2 years. Maybe not all that time traveling, but for about 2 years. And if the star rose at the time that Yeshua was born, and they are coming to Jerusalem 2 years later, it may very well be that Matthew 2 takes place about 2 years after Matthew 1. Now, here's where I say the traditions of the traditions of what people think the Bible says are way different from what the Bible actually says. Now, one of the things that we know about the events surrounding the birth of Yeshua, and we get this mainly from Luke's gospel, is that after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, on the 8th day of his life, he was circumcised and officially given his name, Yeshua, which means Yahweh saves. So the child is named and circumcised on the 8th day. Now, that could happen anywhere. That didn't have to happen in the temple. It could have happened in the temple. But any local rabbi would be able to circumcise. And the Jewish people have, they call them moles. A mole is a person who performs circumcisions. It's not necessarily a doctor, but it's somebody who has training to do that. So it was the same in biblical times. Basically, anybody with training, including rabbis, usually rabbis, could perform a circumcision. That happened for Yeshua. Where he was circumcised, the Bible doesn't tell us. It could have happened any place. But then 40 days after he was born, Mary was required to go to the temple and offer sacrifices for her purification. So after a mom has a child under the law of Moses, she's required to offer a sacrifice after an appropriate time of cleansing. And for her, it was 40 days after the birth. So Luke tells us that she did that. They offered probably a monetary offering at the temple to redeem Jesus. After his birth, he was her firstborn, so they redeemed him. Then they undoubtedly, in fact, Luke tells us at the end of the story of the offerings that were presented in the temple, the presentation in the temple, and the prophecies that were made there by Simeon and Anna, tells us that the Holy Family went home to Nazareth. So they were only in Bethlehem for about 40 days after the birth of Yeshua, and then they went home to Nazareth. So 2 years later, when the Magi come to Jerusalem, where is Yeshua going to be? Where's his family going to be? Not in Bethlehem anymore. They have gone home to Nazareth. So I'm suggesting that the star led them to the north, to Nazareth, to the very house, the very place where he was living. Then verse 10, Kio otam. Here we have a kaf, prefix preposition, meaning, it usually means like. Here it means kind of like when. Ra'otam, when they saw et hakokav, and when they saw the star in the sky, samhu, they were happy, they rejoiced, they were full of joy. Simcha gadolah, with a very great joy. So they rejoiced with a very great joy. Ad, until me'od. So there are a lot of superlatives connected with the joy that they experienced when they saw the star. They rejoiced, simcha gadolah, with a great joy. Ad meod, this great joy was very great. So the Bible here is really emphasizing how happy they were when they saw the star. Of course, they followed it. And we've already been told that the star led them to the very place, the house where Yeshua was. Chem niknasu, they entered in. Kanas, we've already talked about, means to like to enter in for a gathering. Labate, to the bait. Jesus is no longer in a manger, so all the nativity scenes that you have seen and used that show Mary, Joseph, and Jesus in a barn or a stable or even a cave, with straw on the ground, and surrounded by a couple of shepherds and three wise men. That's not the way it happened. The wise men came later, like 2 years later. So here they are in Nazareth, to the house, at the house. Ve'ra'u, and they saw at direct object indicator, Hayeled, the child, with Miriam, that's Mary's name in Hebrew, Miriam, Imo, his mom. Naflu, they fell. Nafal is to fall. So they fall on al panechem, on their faces. They fell on their faces, not hurting their faces, but they were bowing down in worship with their faces to the ground, showing reverence and appreciation and stuff for Yeshua. Vehishtachavu, and they worshiped to him. Lo. Patachu, and opened, they opened at direct object indicator. Let's see, sarorotehem. Saror is like a gift. They're treasures. They opened their treasures. Vehigshu, and they approached to him. Matanav, they brought to him. They brought to him gifts. Matanot. Matan is a gift. Matanot is the plural, gifts. And here's what the gifts were. Zahav is gold. Levana is the Hebrew word for white, but that is frankincense. Frankincense, I guess, is white colored, so it's just called levana. Va more, and more. More is mur, smurnan in Greek. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And then verse 12, la'achar, to after, she, who's halu, so what, in the direction of after, that they were warned, b'halom. Here we have a bait, prepositional prefix, meaning in. Halom is the Hebrew word for a dream, in a dream. So after they were warned in a dream, shalo, here we have a prepositional prefix, sheen, meaning that, not. They were warned in the dream that not. Lachazor, chazor is one of the Hebrew words that means return, so that they should not return, to Holodos, to Herod. After they'd been warned that, Yatzau, they went la'atzam, to their land, lamed prefix, meaning to their land. Eretz is the Hebrew word for land. Atzam is their land. So the suffix am means theirs, the wise men's land. Baderek, in a road or in a path or a route, in a route, acheret, other, and another route. So they had gone to Jerusalem first, then they went to Nazareth. Now, if they were going back to Herod, they would have had to go south again, but they probably just went kind of by the way of the sea, kind of northeast to the Euphrates River and followed the Euphrates River back to where they had come from. So they went home another way. Chem, halaku, they, halaku, halak is to walk or travel. They traveled, misham, from there. Malach is the Hebrew word, and an angel of Adonai or Yahweh, an angel of Yahweh. Now, I think we've talked about this before. An angel of Yahweh is sometimes an appearance. It's called a theophany or even a Christophany, isn't like an appearance of God himself, kind of in the form of an angel who's taking on human characteristics. But anyway, Malach Yahweh, it can be an appearance of God himself, or it can be an angel who's on an assignment from Yahweh. Nira, an angel appeared, Yosef, an angel, this angel of the Lord appeared to Yosef, Yeshua's father, Bachalom, again, in a dream. Lots of dreams are happening here. The Amar, and the angel said in the dream, Kum, rise up. Kach, the root word is lakach. The lamed drops out. Lakach means to take. Take et chayeled, the child, va'et imo. The ets here are the direct object indicators. So take the child, va'et imo, ubarach, to flee, fugo, to get out of town. La Mitzrayim, they're supposed to go to Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is the Hebrew word for Egypt. Doesn't sound anything like the word Egypt, does it? So Mitzrayim is the Hebrew word for Egypt. So the angel tells Joseph to take the child and his mom and go to Egypt. And like be there, live there, Sham, there, ad, until, asher, which, omar, I tell to you, lecha. Ki, because, hordos, Herod, yechafes, he's going to seek out diligently. This is another word for seeking out and investigating. He's going to find et hayeled, the child, kadeh, so that le chashmid, shamid or shamad means to destroy. So here we have a lamed prefix meaning to, which would be in order to, not necessarily direction, but intention to. Chashmid, this is a special kind of form of the verb shamad. It's called hifel, and it means causal. So it would be to cause, so that he can cause the destruction, oto, of him. And the him would be Yeshua. So Herod's going to search him out and destroy. Now, some people say if Herod sent the wise men to Bethlehem, because that's where he thought Yeshua could be found, and they didn't go to Bethlehem. They went to Nazareth. Why would this angel warn them to go to Egypt? Why would they have to go to Egypt until Herod died? Because he would have done his best. We'll find out in a few verses that Herod is going to send his soldiers or his policemen or his Gestapo or whoever they were to Bethlehem to kill all the children 2 years old and under. So if Yeshua wasn't there and wasn't going to be killed, why would Joseph and Mary and Jesus have to go to Egypt to like hide out from Herod? Well, the reason for that is Herod does send his wise men to Bethlehem, but the whole reason that Joseph, Mary, and Yeshua was born in Bethlehem was because they had to go there to register for the census. So a census had recently been taken in Bethlehem, and Yeshua was born there, so he would be included in the census. So one of the things that the Gestapo of Herod would find out when they diligently searched for the, when they investigated every information they could find, was that they would find the census, and they would discover that there was a child named Yeshua who had been born in Bethlehem at the right time, but he wasn't there when they killed all the other children. So they would start investigating, like, where did this child go? Well, the census probably also would have included, like, the hometown, the permanent residence of Joseph, Mary, and Jesus, and that would be Nazareth. So I don't know if they actually did go to Nazareth hunting for the child, but they certainly could have. There was certainly a danger that that could happen. So, verse 13, Ham, they, which would be, let's see, Ham halaku, they halaku, like after the wise men had gone. Oh, we already did this, didn't we? We already did the Malach Yahweh appearing and warning them to go to Mitzrayim. Sorry, I didn't advance the text here. Okay, chapter 2, verse 14. Who, he, that would be Joseph, who just had the dream. Kam, he arose. Velakach, and took. So there's the lakach with the lamed, and took et chayeled, took the child, the et imo, and his mom, balayla. Lila is the Hebrew word for night. So here we have a bait prefix, meaning in the night. So Joseph didn't waste any time. He didn't wait till morning to take off for Egypt. So while it was still night, while it was still dark, he took the child and his mother, Veyatza, and he went out. La Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is Egypt. La means to. So he started the journey to Egypt. Verse 15. Sham, which is it would be like there, in that place. Nishar, he let's see, he remained. That's probably a nifal form, which you'll learn about later. Remained ad, until mot, the death. Mot means death. Chodos. So Herod was an old guy. He was close to death, and they stayed there in Egypt until he did die. L'kayem, to fulfill. Let's see, kayam means to rise up. So one of the ways that something can rise up is to fulfill, like for a prophecy to be fulfilled. The prophecy arose when it was filled. La kayam, to fulfill. Et, direct object indicator. Asher, which was. Diver, spoken. Adonai, which the Lord had spoken. Ba-fi. So here we have the bait prefix, which means in. Fi is the Hebrew, or P is the Hebrew word for mouth. Your fi is your mouth. So the Lord had spoken in the mouth of Hanavi, of the prophet, of one of the prophets. This is very vivid, and it speaks to us about the inspiration of the Bible. You can almost take this literally and say the way the Lord inspired people is he got into their mouths and spoke through them. It's like he gave them the very words to speak. So God spoke in the mouth of the prophets. And here is something that was written in Hosea chapter 11. Mi Mitzrayim. Here we have the mem prefix attached to the Hebrew word for Egypt, Mitzrayim. So from Egypt, Karati, I have called. Kara, Kuf, Resh, Aleph is the Hebrew word for call or summon. I have called or summoned. Livni, to my son. Ben, to my son. Verse 16. ka'asher ra'ah, so that when, I guess, when he saw ra'ah hordos, the death of Herod had been predicted, but he's still alive in verse 16. When Herod saw ki chetelu, he had been fooled, or he had been tricked in him. Ha-Hokamim, the wise men had tricked in him. They'd done a trick in him. They had fooled him. Ragaz means to be angry. It just means to be like fuming. Ethumothe, to be like filled with emotion, particularly like a lust for revenge. So he was ragaz. And not only was he ragaz, but he was ragaz ad meod, until really great, until exceedingly. Veshalach, he sent, Herod sent laharog, to harog is harag is to kill. So here we have the lamed prepositional prefix meaning to. In this case, it means with the purpose of killing. Et, direct object indicator, call every or all hayeladim, the children. Sheba Bethlehem. She is a prefix that means that, but we also have a prepositional prefix, ba, meaning in, that were in Bethlehem, in Bethlehem. U, vakal, and in, call, all, savivotecha, all the surrounding areas. So Herod is furious. He's been tricked by the wise men. He sends his executioners to Bethlehem to kill all the children of Bethlehem and the surrounding region. Now, Bible scholars have been debating for centuries about how many children were probably killed by the Gestapo of Herod when they came to Bethlehem and the surrounding regions. It may have been a lot of kids, it may have been few kids, but if it was one kid, it was too many. These were innocent children. The rival king was not even there. And yet this was just a massacre because Herod was a madman. He was paranoid about his throne. He was paranoid about the Parthians. And it resulted, when people like that are given power, it resulted in a massacre of however many children 2 years old and under were in Bethlehem. Mid B'nai, from the sons of Shnataim, sons of 2 years old, Vemata, and under. That's how you say it in Hebrew. From main prefix, from, children of, sons of, Shnataim, two. This Shana is the Hebrew word for a year. And because it's in the dual form, Shnataim, it means 2 years, Vemata, and under. Lifane, which here it means based on. Literally, we've got the prepositional prefix lamed, which means to. P is the mouth of. So it could be to or from the mouth of. Ha'et, the time. Asher, which. Kava. And here again, kava is one of those terms that means to inquire diligently and investigate thoroughly. Mifane, from the mouth of ha-hochamim. So what did Herod learn from the mouths of the hochamim, the wise men, the magi, the magoi? It was that they had been following that star for 2 years. The star rose 2 years ago. And so Herod uses that 2-year time frame to make sure he gets every potential child that they were wanting to worship. So Herod's a bad guy. Az, then, Nit Kayem, then arose, like, no, actually, this is an example of this was fulfilled. Then Nit Kayem, fulfilled, was arose and fulfilled. Ha-ne'amar, the thing that was spoken, befi Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu is the prophet, and something he had spoken, befi, with his mouth, in his mouth, Hanavi, Yirmiyahu Hanavi, Jeremiah the prophet. This name, Yirmiyahu, the who part doesn't translate in English, but Hebrew names that end in Yahoo. Yahoo is a shortened form of Yahweh. So I don't know, Yirmiyahu probably means something like Yahweh is the highest or something like that. But be on the lookout for Hebrew names that end in Yahoo, Yirmiyahu. And here's what Yirmiyahu had spoken. Kol, a voice, Ramah, in Ramah, bait, prepositional prefix, in Ramah. Ramah is a place name. If Bethlehem is a suburb of Jerusalem, Ramah is a suburb of Bethlehem. So Ramah is a little bit to the north of Bethlehem. It's like I say, it's a suburb of Bethlehem. Some important events took place there, and Jeremiah is going to be speaking prophetically about one of those events. First of all, Jeremiah is going to predict this massacre of the infant children of Bethlehem and surrounding area at the time that Jesus was born. But there's also a significant event that took place in Ramah, just north of Bethlehem, in Old Testament days. You'll remember that Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was married. He actually ended up married to 4 women, Leah and Rachel, and then the 2 maidservants of the 2 girls. So he actually had 4 wives. And all of those wives were pretty fruitful, productive as far as having children were concerned, except Rachel. And Rachel was barren for many years. And Rachel's first child, God did a miracle for her probably, and her first child, Joseph, was born while they were still living up north in Haran, in modern day Syria. They were living up there with Laban, but when they with Laban, Rachel and Leah's dad, and then but they made their way back south to the promised land. And while they were living in the Bethlehem area, Ramah, Rachel gave birth to her second child, but tragically she died in childbirth. And as she was dying, she named the child Ben-Oni, which means son of my pain, which is, wow, very compelling. But Jacob, who obviously survived her, did not want his child named son of my pain. So he named him Ben-Yamin, son of my right hand, which means like he is the strength of my right hand. So Rachel died there in Ramah in childbirth. And if you go to Ramah today, you can visit the Kever Rachel, the burial place, the tomb of Rachel. So Kol Baramah Nishma is heard. Nechi, there is Baki, crying, weeping. Ta'urim, it's like odoromos. Let's see, that would be much, a lot. That would be a lot of crying. Rachel, that's Rachel's name, Rachel. It's actually like Raquel Welch used to be a actress. Maybe she's still acting. I don't know if she's alive or not, but but Raquel is the Hebrew pronunciation of Rachel. So her name was actually not Rachel, but it was Rachel, Rachel. Mibacha, crying, al, concerning or about, baneha, her children. Now, this is kind of interesting because the prophet pictures Rachel crying about her children, but she's the one who died in childbirth. So she may have been crying because the child that she gave birth to was causing her so much pain, and that's why she named him Benoni. But this is children. This is plural about her children. Um, uh, so it's just hard to know what exactly that means. It's kind of I don't know, kind of ambiguous. A prophecy. Me'ana, uh, from their being not, Lechinachem, and she would not be comforted, ki enam, because they were not. A me'ana probably means that she could not be comforted. Me'ana lechinachem, she could not be comforted because enam, because they were not, like her children were not. And it's almost as if the prophet is saying that when Rachel was dying and was in so much pain, um, uh, just before she died, she may have gotten a vision or something about many children, at some point in the future that we're reading about now. At some point in the future, those children would be put to death by a madman, and she was weeping about it. So Matthew tells us that the massacre of the children of Bethlehem was actually a fulfillment of this prophecy by Jeremiah. Verse 19, Acharim Mot, after the death of Hodos, Nirah appeared Malach Yahweh, an angel of the Lord, El Yosef, Bachalom, to Joseph in a dream, Ba'eretz Mitzrayim. So remember, an angel had appeared to him before the massacre of the infants of Bethlehem and told him to go to Egypt because the murderers, the slaughterers, the executioners would probably be hunting his child down too, as long as Herod was alive. So you get the impression that Herod was such a madman, but he was so powerful that these executioners would do whatever he said, even if it went against conscience. But once he died, they would be free to obey their consciences, and there would be no longer any concern about the child being hunted down and murdered. So they were in the land of Egypt. Verse 20. Ba'amar, and he said, Kum, arise. Kach, which is a shortened form of lakach. Actually, it's the, what do they call that? It's the command form, the imperative form of kach, et chayeled, take the child, va'et imo, and his mother, va'lech, and go. And this is a shortened form of halach. Halach means to walk or to travel. But the hey, the H drops out in some forms, especially the imperative form. Ve'alech, and go, la'eretz, to the land of Israel. Go back home. Ki, because, metu, they have died, hamabakashim, kavash, yeah, means to seek out. When it's people seeking out, it's mevakashim, mevakash, or if it's plural, it's mevakashim. The one seeking out et nefesh, the soul or the life of Hayeled, of the child. So they've all died. So there's no reason to stay in Egypt any longer. Verse 21, Hukam, he arose, velakach, and took et, direct object indicator, Hayeled, he took the child, ve'et imo, and his wife, uvo, and he came or he went, la'eretz, lamed, prepositional prefix, to the land of Israel. Israel. Verse 22, aval, but bishma'o, in, prepositional prefix bait, in shma'o, his hearing, when he heard, ki, that Archelaus was the son of Herod the Great, who had murdered the son didn't murder the infants of Bethlehem, but Herod the Great did, and he died shortly thereafter. Kind of a hideous death, too. His son, Archelaus, became the king of Judah. Now, Herod the Great ruled over almost all of Israel, again, under the thumb of the Romans, but he ruled a lot of territory. When he died, when Herod the Great died, his kingdom was divided up into different tetrarchies. A tetrarchy is like a fourth of a kingdom. And Archelaus got Jerusalem and Judea. That was his quarter. That was his fourth of the kingdom. Another son, Herod Antipas, got Galilee and I believe Perea. And then there was Philip and I don't know, some other ones. But Archelaus, not much is said about him, but he apparently was a pretty scary individual. We learn a lot about Herod Antipas, who ruled for quite some time in Galilee and Perea. So, but when Joseph heard that Archelaus, Molech, was kinging, he was, this is a participle form of the verb to rule as a king. He was Moleching, Beahuda, in Judea, Beit, a prepositional prefix, in Yehuda, the territory of Judah. B'makom, in the place of, means he had replaced Holodos, Herod Aviv. I think Archelaus was probably Herod Archelaus or Archelaus Herod or something like that. But he was the son of Herod and he ruled in his father's place. Pachad. Joseph was afraid. He was afraid. Joseph was afraid. Lalechet, here we have the lamed prepositional prefix, to lechet, to go. Halak, again, is the Hebrew word for traveling or walking, to go. Lesham, to there, to that place. La'ahar, and after, she Huzahar, he was warned, Bahalom, another dream. Yatzah, he went, El, to, Savivot, a roundabout way. He went around in a roundabout way, Hagalil, to Galilee. Savivot means to surround. Now, normally in New Testament times, of course, the land was kind of divided up into different territories. There was Judah in the south. There was Perea over on the east of the Jordan River. There was Samaria in kind of the middle of the country on the west side of the Jordan River. Galilee was up north around the Sea of Galilee. And normally, because Jews and Samaritans didn't get along well together, they like if a Jewish person was going from Galilee to Judea, he would detour to the east. So he would travel east of the Jordan River down through Perea. And then when he got far enough south that he was no longer across from Samaria. Then he would cross over the Jordan River again and go to Judea or Jerusalem or wherever he was headed, and vice versa. So Jews did not normally travel through Samaria. Now Yeshua is going to travel through Samaria, and we'll probably learn about that later on. But so they probably went the roundabout way, across the Jordan River, went up through Perea, and then went to Galilee. Verse 23, who is he is she, and me is who he he came, vayashav, and lived, bayir, in a city. Ba prefix means in a city, ha-nicharet, which was called Nazaret, or Notzrat. That's the name of the city of Nazareth. Lema'an, in order to, Yit Kayam, and here again we have the word Kayam, which means to stand. So their living there in Nazareth would cause a fulfillment of a prophecy. Hane'emar, which was spoken, al pi, like that would be through the mouth, hanaviim, of the prophets, plural. Ki, that, notzri, a Nazarene, yikre, lo, would be called him. In other words, he would be called a Nazarene. So when Joseph and Mary and Jesus went to live in Nazareth, Natzrat, that fulfilled a prophecy that was spoken by the prophets, that he would be called, Jesus would be called a Notzri, a Nazarene. Vayikare lo, it would be called him Nazarene. Almost every Bible commentator says that the reason Jesus was called a Nazarene was because he lived in Nazareth. But Nazarene does not mean a resident of Nazareth. It means a person who belongs to the sect or the denomination of the Nazarenes. The Nazarenes were a branch group of another sect, a very similar sect, called the Essenes. The Essenes are famous for being the people who wrote and hid and have provided us with the Dead Sea Scrolls. They lived in many places around the Promised Land, but especially they lived, they're best known for their community at Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. So Nazarene does not mean a resident of Nazareth. Now, some places in the New Testament where Jesus is said to be apo Nazaret, that means he was from Nazareth. But there's only 2 or 3 places where the Bible says that. Other places in Greek, it says to Nazaraios or Nazarenos, and there it always means that he was a member of this sect. Now, the Essenes are known for their celibacy. There was this other group, the Nazarenes, that believed the same thing as the Nazarenes, only they got married and raised kids and had families and stuff like that. So the Nazarenes were the non-celibate sect of the Essenes. So the prophets were saying he will be a Netzer, a Nazarene, not a resident of Nazareth. Now, the thing that Nazareth and Nazarene have in common is the same 3-letter root word, Nun Tzadi Resh. And they both mean a watchman or a keeper or something like that. And it can mean nouns or verbs, and so it has various meanings. But Yeshua was a member of this sect. Now, the interesting thing is that Matthew says that the prophets had spoken about this. But if you look in the Old Testament, you can't find the name of the city of Nazareth anywhere. But you can find a reference, in fact, many references, to a branch group. Netzer means a branch, or a keeper, or a watchman. And one prophet prominently speaks of this, and it was Isaiah who wrote in chapter 11, verse 1, that a branch would come from the stump, like the cut off tree of Jesse. And what this means is that when one of David's descendants was sitting on the throne of Judah, and his name was Yechoniah, or Coniah, also known as Coniah. He was such an evil and wicked king that God cut off all of his descendants from sitting on the throne. So that proclamation by God that none of the descendants of Yechoniah would sit on the throne of David was like the tree of Jesse being cut off. And this was a serious problem, because the ultimate messianic king, the king that Herod understood Yeshua to be, was to come from David's descendants, Jesse's descendants through David, and through this king Jeconiah. So how was the Messiah ever going to be able to sit on the throne of Israel if the branch of the family tree through which he was supposed to come was cut off at Jeconiah? And that is the reason the virgin birth is so essential, because it was not people who were in the lineage of Jeconiah that were cut off, but his blood relatives. The genealogy in Matthew chapter 1 tells us that Joseph was a descendant of Jeconiah, and David through Jeconiah, Jesse and David through Jeconiah. If Joseph had been the father, like the earthly father of Jesus, if he had inseminated Mary so that she gave birth to Yeshua in that way, Jesus would not have been allowed to sit on the throne of Israel, because he would have then been a blood relative of David through Jeconiah by means of Joseph. But Joseph didn't have anything to do with the birth of Yeshua. Mary conceived by the Holy Spirit and gave birth by the Virgin Mary. She was a virgin. And the Holy Spirit inseminated her, caused her to become pregnant. So Yeshua is not a blood relative of Joseph. But because he is in the genealogy of Jesse and David and Jeconiah, he was in line to sit on the throne. But because Jesus was not a blood relative of that line, he was able to sit on the throne, because undoubtedly there was an adoption there. Joseph adopted him. He would be his legitimate son, and so Jesus is therefore eligible to sit on the throne. If it hadn't been for the virgin birth, Yeshua would not have been able to be the messianic king. So I wrote a book on this subject. It is called Yeshua. He will be called a Nazarene, by Robert Schreiner. It's available on Amazon if you're interested in reading up on this subject of Jesus being associated with the Nazarenes and the whole story of Jeconiah and so forth. Let me give you the blessing and we'll call it quits for this Hebrew school lesson. Let's go ahead and do it first in Hebrew. Yivarechecha Yahweh vayishmarecha, Ya'er Yahweh panav elecha v'yuchanecha, Yisa Yahweh panav elecha Vayasem lecha shalom. And that means, in English, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you with favor or lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. In Yeshua's name, amen.